How to Flourish, the 8 Pillars of a Flourishing Life. This is the 8th edition of my How to Flourish newsletter. It's available in text, video, and audio on Substack and LinkedIn at Dr. John Beal. The highlights of this newsletter are, first, the 8 areas of life that research has identified as most important for supporting human flourishing, and second, a method for promoting flourishing by improving each of these 8 areas. What does it mean to flourish? To flourish means for a living organism to grow or develop in a healthy or vigorous way, especially as a result of a particularly congenial environment. That's the definition from the Oxford English Dictionary. The verb comes from the Latin word florere, meaning to bloom or flower. When a flower blooms, it reaches the peak of its development. To flourish as human beings is to reach our optimal development, to live the best lives we can, given our nature and relative to the environment in which we live. To find what constitutes optimal human development, we need to identify the factors that most help us reach it. An effective way to do this is to identify factors that fulfill 2 criteria. First, those that most significantly improve our well-being. These include health, happiness, and strong relationships. Second, those we pursue as ends in themselves rather than as a means to some further end. These are the ultimate goals of our activities, things we do for their own sake just because we want to do them. We all desire lives where we have obtained these. The best life for a human being is one in which at least some of these ends have been fulfilled. All of the major theories of flourishing, from Aristotle to today, aim to identify these and show us how to reach them. To illustrate an end in itself, consider the reasons that you go walking. You do so as a means to various ends, to reach destination, to exercise, or simply because you enjoy walking. If you walk just because you enjoy it, a child might ask you, but why do you want that? You could respond by saying that doing things you enjoy makes you happier. Again, the child might ask, but why do you want that? It's now harder to answer, not just because the question is more difficult, but because we've reached the end in itself. Why wouldn't you want to be happier? Happiness is the clearest example of something we pursue for its own sake. We don't want happiness because it'll help us reach some further goal. We want it simply because it's good. Right, the next section is on theories of flourishing. Aristotle argued that there was only one end in itself. Eudaimonia, an ancient Greek word which translates to flourishing or happiness. Many great thinkers since Aristotle have agreed. But in recent decades, researchers have identified several areas of life that we pursue for their own sake and argued that flourishing is best understood as a combination of these. For example, positive psychology, the scientific study of flourishing, defines flourishing as optimal psychological well-being, consisting of 5 domains we pursue as ends in themselves, which significantly improve our well-being. The Human Flourishing Program at Harvard also identifies 5 domains, some of which are different to those in positive psychology. Describing this theory of flourishing, Tyler Van der Weel and Tim Lomas from the Human Flourishing Program define flourishing as, quote, the relative attainment of a state in which all aspects of a person's life are good, including the contexts in which that person lives, end quote. All aspects of life refers to the 5 domains identified in the Human Flourishing Program's theory. Contexts covers a person's environment, culture, and the time in which they live. For example, if a person has high well-being but lives in a conflict zone or a society in which they're oppressed, this prevents flourishing. Next section, the 8 pillars of human flourishing. Since there are differences across theories of flourishing about the domains that constitute flourishing, an effective way to define flourishing and show how to flourish is to extract all of these areas and find a method for promoting all of them as much as possible. I do this in what follows. In addition to the two theories of flourishing above, I've also looked in particular at the influential theories of flourishing by UNESCO and the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtues, and the longest ever study of human life, the Harvard study of adult development. From these theories and others, we can identify 8 key areas of life that most promote flourishing. Research has shown that these significantly improve our well-being. We generally pursue these as ends in themselves. In what follows, I explain these 8 pillars of flourishing and describe a method for increasing flourishing by promoting each area. And I discuss this research in more detail in a forthcoming book chapter, which I've linked in the blog. Now, since Flourish has 8 letters, we can usefully use this as an acronym to represent these 8 pillars. F, fulfillment; L, love; O, optimism and positive emotions; U, unifying meaning; R, responsibility; I, impact; S, states of flow; and H, health. And I summarize all these in a short video I've linked in the blog, and there's an image to illustrate these. I'll now describe each of these 8 areas. Starting off with fulfillment. Fulfillment has 2 key senses particularly important for flourishing. First, fulfillment of potential, and second, fulfillment in the sense of life satisfaction. We all want to fulfill our potential. Many regard this as the most important aim of life. This is desirable as long as we use our potential to do good things. Fulfillment has a second sense important for flourishing: contentment with our lives. This is sometimes captured in the theories of flourishing by life satisfaction, for example, by the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard. Second, love. This covers good and close social relationships. Research shows that relationships have an incredibly powerful impact on our health, happiness, and well-being. In fact, it's no exaggeration to say that the strength of our relationships is the most significant predictor of our long-term happiness and well-being. That's been the key finding from the Harvard study of adult development, which has tracked hundreds of people and their families for 87 years. It's found that relationships are the greatest predictor of happiness, well-being, and health. Strong relationships are even better at predicting whether we'll live a happy and long life than our genes, IQ, or social class. I've written a blog on that topic, which I've linked in the blog, and I've also linked a conversation that I have for my podcast, Flourish FM, with the Harvard Studies Associate Director, Dr. Mark Schulz. Third, optimism and positive emotions. This encompasses happiness and other positive emotions such as optimism, joy, laughter, and gratitude. We all desire these, and they significantly contribute to living a good life. Gratitude is especially powerful. Experiencing and practicing gratitude has been shown to significantly increase happiness and the strength of our relationships, and even help us live longer. Optimism has also been shown to significantly improve our health and well-being. It's also a skill that we can learn. Note, however, that my labeling of this pillar, optimism and positive emotions, is not because optimism has greater benefits than all other positive emotions. It's simply because I needed something suitable to represent the O in the Flourish acronym. All right, fourth is unifying meaning. Now this covers meaning, purpose, and mattering. The first 2 of these concern the sense of meaning and purpose we find in our lives and our most important activities, such as our relationships and work. The final, mattering, concerns how much we feel we matter in our roles at work and how much we feel our work matters. For example, we feel like our work makes a positive difference and we're not easily dispensable. I've called these unifying to bring these 3 areas together, meaning, purpose, and mattering, and again, to make this fit the acronym. Now, mattering has been identified as increasingly important in workplace well-being in recent years. This led to it being added to positive psychology's theory of flourishing. And for a discussion of mattering, I've linked in the blog a conversation I had for my podcast with Dr. Zach Mercurio, who's the author of The Power of Mattering. And on mattering in positive psychology, I've linked a conversation I have with Gabriella Kellerman, who's co-author of the book Tomorrow Mind, with one of the founding psychologists behind positive psychology, Martin Seligman. And in that book, they describe how they've changed the M in the PERMA theory of well-being in positive psychology, the M which used to stand for meaning, and now it stands for meaning and mattering. All right, the fifth pillar of human flourishing is responsibility. This represents good character, which we can develop by building character virtues or strengths. This also covers building good habits which develop virtues and strengths. For example, building the habit of a strong work ethic develops the virtue of conscientiousness. Character development is vital for various areas of flourishing, such as fulfilling our potential and reaching happiness. Most importantly, it's vital for becoming a good person, because a good person is someone with good character virtues. Aristotle emphasized the importance of character for flourishing, and today neo-Aristotelian theories of flourishing, such as that by the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtues, focus on character as the most important area of flourishing. Sixth pillar, impact. This covers meaningful accomplishments. These range from everyday wins, like giving it our all in a morning fitness class, to lifetime achievements, like landing our dream job. Accomplishments that we find meaningful significantly improve our lives in ways important for flourishing, such as eliciting positive emotions and bringing us life satisfaction. Seventh pillar, states of flow. Flow is the state of optimal attention and performance where we completely concentrate on a challenging activity that stretches our skills to their limits. You experience flow when you're in the zone, playing sports, or so engrossed by a book you can't put it down. You can experience flow alone or in groups, hence there being multiple states. Now, research has shown that flow has a substantial impact on areas important for flourishing: our health, happiness, sense of meaning in life, psychological well-being, and performance. And for a summary of those, I've linked a forthcoming book chapter of mine where I give a summary of the research on the benefits of flow. Flow is one of the 5 areas of well-being constituting positive psychology's theory of flourishing. And for a description of flow's connection with flourishing, I've linked a talk I gave. You can see the full video on YouTube on that. Now, if you'd like to learn more about flow and to attend free monthly masterclasses on flow, I've recently set up a free online platform called the Flow Lab, which you can join via the link in my newsletter. All right, 8th and final pillar, health. Now, this covers mental and physical health, but it also covers vitality, the feeling of energy we have in our day-to-day lives. So, for example, if you've slept really well and you've recovered well after the previous day, you've probably got high vitality. But if you're suffering from flu or a hangover, then you're going to have low vitality. Now, health is obviously vital for flourishing and is an area most people desire as an end in itself. All right, so those are the 8 pillars of flourishing. Now let's look at how to flourish by promoting each area. The most effective way to improve flourishing is to do the following. And I also explain this in a video I've linked in the blog. Build all of the 8 pillars as much as you reasonably can without your efforts to build any of them risking significantly depleting any others long term. So, for example, many people prioritize impact by working extremely hard to accomplish as much as they can. Their work is also a major source of meaning for them. That's represented by pillar U, and it's also a major source of fulfillment in their lives, represented by pillar F. So this supports flourishing. Now that's great. However, many people also, as a consequence of this, prioritize work so much that it takes a significant toll on their health and relationships, represented by H and L in the pillars. Many people worldwide are lonely, chronically sleep deprived, and at high risk of burnout, primarily because of how much they prioritize work over everything else. So this is an example of how an excessive focus on areas of life important for flourishing depletes other areas. A highly successful but unhealthy and lonely person isn't flourishing. And I've linked in the blog a video where I explain another example of where a person would not be flourishing because they focus on other areas of the pillars. Now, short term, such actions don't threaten a person's flourishing. There are periods of life when we need to prioritize things that promote flourishing but have a detrimental impact on our health. For example, sleep deprivation while raising a child, or a period of high stress to achieve a meaningful work goal. But long term, significantly depleting any of the 8 areas limits the potential for flourishing. For example, chronic sleep deprivation and stress significantly impact health and vitality, positive emotions, our ability to work and be present in our relationships, and so on. This is among the reasons flourishing is a long-term state of being. People flourish for periods of their lives, not for a few days or weeks. Now, flourishing is relative. There isn't an objective score you need to reach to flourish, nor a precise balance you need to strike across all of the 8 areas. People differ in terms of which of the areas they most prioritize, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with prioritizing your relationships or health over your work, or vice versa, as long as you don't prioritize any of these so much that their prioritization has a significant detrimental impact on any others long term. Validated measures on flourishing provide you with useful results, but these shouldn't be used to conclude that there's some precise score across some or all of the 8 areas that you need to reach to flourish. They are rather useful measures to identify which areas you should prioritize to improve your well-being and to assess your growth over time. I most recommend using the Flourish measure by the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard and the PERMA measure by the UPenn Positive Psychology Center, which are both freely available online. So, there isn't the same objective level, nor the same balance across all 8 areas we all need to reach to flourish. To flourish, we should aim to reach a good level relative to our condition and situation. For example, the degree to which our health needs to be good to support flourishing is relative to our condition and situation, such as our stage of life. Many of the factors that enable an elderly person to be in good health are different from those that enable a teenager to be in good health. And it's noteworthy that research has found that older adults report the highest level of emotional well-being of all age groups, despite their physical health generally being the lowest of all age groups. This is among the reasons why, as we saw above, Tyler Van der Weel and Tim Lomas of the Human Flourishing Program define flourishing as the relative attainment of a state in which all aspects of a person's life are good. Okay, final part, the takeaway. From research on flourishing, we can identify 8 key areas of life that most support flourishing. These I call the 8 pillars of flourishing: fulfillment, love, optimism and positive emotions, unifying meaning, responsibility, impact, states of flow, and health. I would define flourishing as a long-term state of being in which each of these pillars is strong relative to an individual and their environment. I use environment here to cover the time, place, and situation in which one lives. The most effective way to promote flourishing is to build all of the pillars as much as you reasonably can without your efforts to build any of them risking significantly depleting any others long term. Try to do this, but watch out for where your efforts to build any area risk significantly depleting any of the others. When there is this risk, reassess your approach, looking for ways to continue building each area while avoiding this risk. I've included a set of recommended resources at the end of this, which I also refer to throughout this blog. If you have any points to share on this, any responses, any questions, please feel free to comment in Substack or LinkedIn or YouTube. I would love to hear. Good luck with your own flourishing. Good luck promoting flourishing in your own life and in the lives of others.